All right, so now in this question, we are starting with functions, and here we are given a linear function, right? Now, this is a straight line graph, right? And it can be also written in a form of y is equals to mx plus c. Now, what do these alphabets stand for? Now, let us start with your m. Your m is your gradient, right? Remember, m is whatever value that is attached to your x. And what about your c? Your c would always represent your y-intercept, right? So your m is your gradient, and your c would always be your y-intercept. Now, answering the preceding questions, they say we must write down the gradient of the line. Now, I said your gradient is the value of m, which is the value attached to your x. Now, can you see that here our gradient would be -3. So our m, which is our gradient for this, it will be equals to -3. Now, next question, calculate the x-intercept. Now, remember I said your c would always be equals to your y-intercept. Your x-intercept, to calculate it, always you need to make y equals to 0 to calculate your x-intercept. Now, our graph we're given as y is equals to -3, x plus 6. Now, if we make y 0, we're going to solve for our x-intercept, minus 3x plus 6. Now, I can take this to the other side for it to become a positive. So I would have 3x is equals to 6. Now, dividing both sides by 3, my x-intercept would be at 2. Now, in terms of coordinates, if I would remember, your coordinates should be in a form of x and y, right? So my x, I've calculated it as 2 in this case. Now I said my y would always be equals to 0 when I'm solving for my x-intercept, meaning that here it will be 0. Now these are the coordinates of my x-intercept. Now, when you're calculating your y-intercept, here your x would always be equals to 0. So for x-intercept, you're going to make y equals to 0. For y-intercept, you're going to make x equals 0. Now here, right, let me write down the equation that I was given. So I was given minus 3x plus 6. So let me write it here. Y is equals to minus 3x plus 6. Now, whenever you're sketching your graph, right, you should make sure that these two things are there. So make sure that you plot, you're first going to start with plotting your x-intercept. Then you're going to move on to plotting your y-intercept. Now, our x-intercept coordinates, remember, we said it's going to be a 2 and 0. Now, our y-intercept, remember we said these value here, it would represent our y-intercept. And always at your y-intercept, we said what? We said your x is equals to 0. So here it will be 0, and my value of y would be the 6. Now, you need to first start by plotting these. So first, you're going to draw your, you're going to make your scale here, right? So I'm going to use a scale of 2, right? So it's 2. Now, my x-intercept, I said my x is going to be at 2, right? So here I'm going to put 2, and my y is going to be at 0. So my x here intercept will be here at 2. My y-intercept, I said, is going to be at 6, right? And this is my 6. And now I'm going to connect these two together to form my graph. So now, right, so my graph should look something like this. And remember to draw your two arrows here to show that your graph continues. Now, you need to name your graph, right? So I'm going to name my graph. Remember, my graph is y is equals to minus 3x plus 6. And after, you need to mention or rather show us your x-intercept and your y-intercept. Write down the two coordinates. Remember, I said here my coordinates would be 2 and 0. You need to show that. And here, remember, I said my coordinates would be 0 and 6 at this point. So you need to show us. You need to write them. And this would be your complete graph. Now, the preceding question, they say on a Cartesian plane above, sketch y is equals to 3, right? So y is equals to 3. First, let us identify our 3 on our y-axis. Remember, this line, which is vertical here, it is our y-axis line, right? So our 3, so let me plot the point. Our 3 is here, somewhere here. Now, if this line is y is equals to 3, it means it would pass through this point 3 and it will be parallel to your x-axis like that. So it would look something like this. And here you need to indicate your two arrows. And you would name that this graph is your y is equals to 3. So this is your y is equals to 3 graph, right? What if they ask you to sketch graph x is equals to -4? You'd have done the same thing. You'd have plotted your -4. So this is my -4, and I would draw my line that would pass through that -4 like that. Now proceeding on with functions, here we're given lines of f. Now f is indicated in red, and g, which is indicated in blue. Now these graphs are drawn below, and they intersect at point 4 and 7. Now this is a point whereby the two graphs meet, whereby our x is equals to 4 and our y is equals to 7. Remember, your coordinates are in terms of x and y always. Now the y-intercept of f is 0 and 5, right? F, remember, is the red. This is where it intercepts your y-axis, and then the x-intercept it's at -10 and 0, right? Now, write down the equation of f, which is the red graph, in the form of y is equals to mx plus c. Now, how would we be able to do that? Now, remember, your m is your gradient. So first, we're going to start by finding our m, which is our gradient. And now, how would we go about doing this? We're going to make use of our gradient formula. So to calculate the gradient of f, we would need to use 2 points, which we are given. So in this case, we are given these 2 points, your y-intercept, which is at 0 and 5, and your x-intercept, which is at -10 and 0. So now, using these 2 points, remember, my y-intercept is at 0, 5, and my x-intercept, they told me it's at -10 and 0. Now, using these 2 points, I'm going to try and calculate my gradient. So I'm going to say y1 minus y2 all over x1 minus x2. Now, substituting my values, right, you could make any y1. So I'm going to make this my y1, and I'm going to make this my y2. And on the other hand, this would be my x1, and this would be my x2. Now, your x1 and your y1, they need to be from the same bracket, right? You can't make this bracket have x1 and make this other bracket to have y1. No, if your x1 is in this bracket, the first bracket, it means that your y1 should also be in this bracket. Now, let me substitute. My y1 is 5 minus my y2, which is 0, divided by my x1, which is 0, minus my x2, which is -10. So I'm going to put it in brackets as -10. Now, as a result, at the top 5 minus 0 is 5. 0. So these two are going to cancel out one another. And at the bottom, you would be left with 10. As a result, your gradient would be equals to 5 over 10. And now punching that into your calculator, this should be equals to a half. Now, I know that my gradient, my m, is equals to 1 over 2. Now, I am left with calculating my value of c. Now, whenever you're determining the equation of your graph, first step 1, you need to find your m, which is your gradient. And remember, to find your gradient, you would need to use any 2 points on your graph. In this case, I used my point 0 and 5, which I was given, as well as my point -10 and 0, which I was also given, right? So you're going to use this gradient formula to calculate your gradient. In this case, our m, which is our gradient, is equals to a half. Now, the last step, which is step 2, this is solving for your value of c. Now, remember, I said, what is your c? C is your y-intercept. And what is the y-intercept of this red graph, right? It is at y is equals to 5. As you could see, this is our y-intercept here. Now, writing my equation in a form of y is equals to mx plus c. My m, I've calculated it as 1 over 2. And this would be x plus my c, which is my y-intercept. And in this case, my y-intercept is at 5. So I'm going to write plus 5. And this would be the equation of my f graph. Right. Now, proceeding on to the last question, whereby they need us to write down the equation of line G. Now, this is our line G, which is in blue. And this line G, if you could look, it's parallel to your y-axis. Now, how would you go about determining the equation for this? Now, if this is parallel to your y-axis, it simply means that the x value here on your x-intercept would also be equals to 4, because the value here, my x here is 4, my x here would also be equals to 4, right? As you could see here on my graph, all my x values, they would be equals to 4. So as a result, the equation of your graph would be G, right? The equation of your graph G, it will be equals to x is equals to 4. Now, this is the equation of your graph, which is G, because it's a vertical line passing through 4.